here, and we will begin. And I'll start us out with a word of prayer. If everybody would join me, please. Dear gracious Heavenly Father, Lord, what a blessing it is to know you, to know that you love us in spite of our flaws and all of our issues and problems. You have them well in hand. And Father, we invite you into this webinar and into this conversation tonight. We ask your blessings upon our speaker, Sahara Sears. Give her wisdom, Lord. May her words be yours. And Lord, bless each of us as we seek to serve you. And we thank you in Jesus' name. Amen. All right, before I kick things over to Sahara, I'm going to see if I can share my screen here. It worked a moment ago, so let's see. Okay. Here we go. Well, it is starting in the middle, so give me just a minute. There we go. Somebody let me know if you can see that okay?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, so first off, if you would like to have the translation, you would take a picture of this, what we call scan this QR code. This is the staff in Florida. I'm going to go super fast today, folks. This is the staff in Florida. This is our wonderful friends at Georgia Cumberland, and then at the New Jersey Conference, and at the Kentucky Tennessee Conference, and at the Southern New England Conference. All of us offer very similar services. If you need estate planning advice or help, please contact the directors or the associate directors in your particular conference, and they would be thrilled to answer any questions. All of us are certified by the NAD. We go through a rigorous certification process that includes continuing education each and every year to make sure we are staying up to date and on the cutting edge of estate planning services. Again, if you need this QR code for the translation app, you would scan right here. We like to say membership, and we mean membership in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, has its privileges, right? And so some of those privileges include a free consultation with one of us, a certified, an NAD certified estate planner. Included with that are basic estate documents. In some conferences, that's completely free, and others, there may be nominal charges. Just depends on which conference you're in. But it would include the notary services and the witnessing and everything that needs to be done to get those documents consummated. Also a consultation with the estate planning attorney who's preparing your documents. These documents are very powerful. They include a power of attorney, your healthcare advance directives, possibly even child guardianship if you have minor children. Certainly a last will and testament, maybe a trust if a trust is appropriate in your situation. Charitable gift annuities, you've heard of those. Those pay much better interest than, say, a CD at a bank. And each one of us are familiar with those and would be happy to talk with you about them. In the South, we have the Southern Union Revolving Fund, but up north, they have their revolving funds as well. These are deposit accounts. Basically, they work like a savings account. And again, they're going to pay you much higher interest than what you would receive at your local bank. Again, I'm rushing through this because I want to allow our speaker to have plenty of time tonight. But if you have questions about any of these services, please call your respective conference representative and we'll be glad to go over that. Now, we're asking everybody to keep their computers muted. You never know when the dogs are going to start barking or somebody's going to ring the doorbell. So that you don't disturb everybody on the call, please keep your computers muted for the time being. There will be opportunities for Q&As later on, or again, you can go to that chat icon that I mentioned earlier and type a question in there, and we will be monitoring that, and we'll ask those questions on your behalf at appropriate times. So now, without further ado, excited about introducing Sahara Sears. She holds a bachelor's in applied science in criminal justice from the University of South Florida. And she's a certified paralegal. You can see the rest of her qualifications. Let it suffice to say that she is, if not an expert, somebody very, very well versed in the items we're discussing tonight, which is identity theft and scams and how to avoid those and what to do if you're caught in something like that. So I'll stop sharing my screen, Sahara, and without further ado, invite you to address us as you will. We're so glad you're here. Thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you, Phil, and welcome back, everyone. If you were here last week, I'm going to share my screen. Welcome back, and if you weren't, welcome for the first time. Going ahead and to get started for the sake of time, just to give you an idea of what I'm going to touch on tonight. As Phil mentioned, I do have a bit of a background in identity theft from a professional. No, I work for a legal and identity theft protection provider, and my scope in my organization is to do product development, product management. So having a pulse on what's going on in the identity theft realm, what's going on with scams. Legal and identity theft often intersect with each other. Sometimes an identity theft event leads to a legal event, for example. So always interested in the topic and was really excited to present on this these past 2 weeks. So what we're going to talk about tonight is we're going to recap a little bit of what we discussed last week, just for continuity, but more so, we can't have a conversation about identity theft anymore without talking about AI, which stands for artificial intelligence, because criminals are using AI as a tool, and it's helping them become more efficient, helping them commit identity theft and fraud more frequently. So I think this is a very important part of the conversation and a really important educational piece for staying proactive and preventing becoming a victim. So today we're just going to do a little recap. We're going to talk about voice cloning. We're going to talk about deep fakes and what those are. We're going to talk about how AI is having an impact on the success of phishing attacks. We're going to talk about data mining and personalization. Also, how AI is being used to help break into secure systems or secure websites. And obviously, I don't want to leave you with, just being scared. So we're going to give some good takeaways and resources at the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to throw them in the chat. I think we're going to wait till the end to take them. But if you think of them, go ahead and throw them in. So last week, we talked about a couple scams in particular. We talked about grandparent scams. We talked about investment scams. But really what we discussed was, what does the profile of a scammer look like? What are the common elements of a scam? And in particular, what are some red flags with scams? So if you recall, last week, we talked about the fact that scammers basically manufacture 3 types of scenarios. They manufacture an opportunity, or sometimes they manufacture a crisis, or sometimes they manufacture a consequence. And it's not uncommon that in one scenario, they can manufacture 2 to 3 of those as a combination, right? So we talked about what are some red flags to look out for that could indicate that you're interacting with a scammer. With romance scams, we talked about the fact that it's really common for a scammer to want to move you off of the platform that you engaged with them on. So for example, if someone was on a dating application and they connected with someone who happened to be a scammer, the first objective of that scammer is to go to another communication channel. Commonly, that tends to be WhatsApp. And the reason for this is so that they can continue to work on the victim and potentially scam them out of money. However, if they get caught, then there's little risk of their profile getting shut down and losing the opportunity to scam the victim, because they're obviously working more than one victim at a time. A big red flag is that they are virtual, they're at a distance, they can't meet in person. They do avoid answering questions. It's always redirection. There's a lot of manipulation that goes into it. Sometimes we think of a lot of gaslighting, right? And that helps work when they're manufacturing these scenarios where something urgent or there's a crisis going on. As I mentioned, proposing opportunity, crisis, or consequence. The biggest obvious red flag, though, is that scammers are going to request either money or they're going to request personal information, right? So how do you know you're engaging with the scammer? Well, you often don't. Oftentimes, you're just going to have to make sure you're being on guard and you're being really skeptical of anyone asking you for funds or for personal information, even if you think you're speaking or engaging with a family member, an employer, a friend, a government entity, and so forth. Again, where do scammers get your personal information? Where do identity thieves get your personal information? More commonly, they shop for it. They go to marketplaces that are located on the dark web and they purchase stolen information. This information winds up on the dark web as a result of data breaches. So every time you see that there's a data breach and you notice that it's a company you may work with, so for example, AT&T had a data breach earlier this year, that's a good indicator for you to be wary of the fact that if you're an AT&T customer, your phone number or any of the other information that was compromised in the breach could be floating around for sale on the dark web and later picked up and used to approach you with, right? Another place is just general information on whatever's floating around on the internet, and also social media. Social media like Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, not so much LinkedIn, but a little bit. A lot of these social media platforms where there's a commerce element to them, like a Facebook Marketplace or a TikTok shop, you can guarantee that there's scammers hanging out there looking for victims. So just be wary, of course, about what information you post on those sites, and then also conducting transactions on these sites as well. And then lastly, we did touch a little bit unintentionally on deed fraud and how that happens. And so just keep in mind that bad actors can have access to any information that's part of your public record. So this is where essentially scammers go to get the information to approach you with. Some general terminology, we're going to talk a little bit about phishing. I think everyone's pretty familiar with what phishing is these days, which is nice. But if you're not, it's a type of attack where scammers will typically impersonate either a person or more commonly a company. And then the objective is to trick you into doing something. Typically, this is entering in login credentials. It could be providing a malicious link. It could be giving the scammer or cyber attacker your two-factor authentication code that came in. It could be a wide variety of things. Sometimes we hear the terminology of phishing versus vishing versus smishing. They're essentially very similar. It's just the type of communication channel that's used in order to victimize someone. So if it's an email, it's phishing. If it's voice, it's phishing. If it's text messaging, we call it smishing. Spoofing is basically a tactic when the attacker either conceals or falsifies their identity as a means to trick you into picking up the phone or interacting with them. So a great example would be that you hear probably a lot, spoofing a telephone number, right? So you may go, well, how is that a scam? When I saw my phone, it said that Bank of America was calling me, right? So these criminals have the ability, and they have software where they can spoof their phone numbers or spoof their information to have the appearance that they are actually from a legitimate company, and this helps validate their scam and trick people into becoming victimized. And then pretexting is more of that social engineering. It's that manipulation we talked about last week, where a scammer will literally craft a scenario, a story, as a way to gain the victim's trust or to validate the false identity that the scammer is portraying. So these are just tactics, again, that scammers use, but they're going to be important when we talk about in the context of how is AI coming into all this. So if you're not familiar, I think most people are familiar, but if you're going, well, what is AI? Well, AI is really a lot of different things, right? We see AI can be really obvious, right? In the forefront, we're starting to see, I think Google just launched the new Google Video AI feature, where it's literally making movies completely out of AI. Sometimes AI is in the background. It's background code that is minimizing inefficiencies in the background. Sometimes it can be language models. AI looks different depending on where you go. But what it is essentially it's computer coding and systems that can mimic human behavior and skill sets. In particular, AI capabilities are, for example, things like recognizing patterns, solving problems, learning. So we hear like AI learning, making decisions, making recommendations, you name it. What AI looks like today is completely different than what AI looked like a year ago, and it's probably going to look completely different when we look at a year ahead. So it's constantly changing, it's constantly learning and evolving. Fraud, again, wrongful criminal deception with intent to defraud someone of money. It's usually for financial and personal gain. And then identity theft is when a criminal actually takes personal identifiable information in order to typically commit fraud. So how do scammers use AI? So the first thing we're going to talk about is voice cloning. And we'll go back to grandparent scams because we talked about that last week. I believe I mentioned my grandfather was a victim of this scam, although the scammer was pretending to be my father. And when this happened to him, the scammer just concealed their voice. And because he was in a car accident, that's why his voice wasn't sounding like my father, but he was in a neck brace. So when my grandfather questioned that, he had an excuse for it, right? That's not necessarily a barrier anymore for scammers, because with voice cloning software and technology, a few 30 seconds to a minute, depends on the platform, can literally take someone's voice, import it into this system, and then you can reproduce that voice to say whatever you want, right? So if I was a scammer and I've got this, recording, if I had access to this recording right here, well, I have access to Sahara's voice. I have access to Phil's voice, and they both certainly gave me, the scammer, enough audio to put into a system like this where I can now manipulate it and make it sound like I can have Sahara make a phone call and say whatever I want her to say, right? So if we think about that in the context of a grandparent scam, we think, oh, we can't say, well, did you not recognize the voice anymore, right? Because that's not necessarily a factor. That may not matter. And the reality is that AI becoming more and more integrated into our everyday lives, as with other technology, once it becomes more affordable, it becomes more frequently used. And so therefore, it's just easier to do this type of stuff. So it's just a little bit about voice cloning. Similar to voice cloning, but on the video side is the terminology of deepfake videos. And I actually have a video really quick. Hopefully it shows. Are you hearing? Can I get a thumbs up if so?
We're not getting sound. We're getting,
Not getting sound?
we're
No
getting the
sound.
video, but not the sound.
Okay, that's all right. I'll speak to it. So what you're looking at here are examples of a legitimate video and a deepfake video. And in the example that just went by, Justin Trudeau's out of Canada, right? He was actually making a book recommendation in the legitimate video. In the second video, which you can now see, it says fake buy it. He said something about the prime minister trying to take over the world, right? Something ridiculous. And I know that this particular news station was trying to show an example. But what's really interesting is that deep fakes have gone from being so obvious that now they're incredibly sophisticated compared to what they used to be. So going back to the slides, and I'm sorry, I wish the audio was working for that, but hopefully that illustrated enough for everyone. And I highly recommend you go look into it yourself and, afterwards, go give it a quick Google. This happened last year where this was an office out of China. An employee that had financial controls was approached by a scammer who was impersonating the CFO of the company. And this finance worker, when he was approached, was actually very suspicious that it may have been a scam, because CEO fraud is nothing new, and business to email compromise, which that they kind of go hand in hand. It is not a new scam by any means. So this financial this worker who had financial controls actually did a form of due diligence, right? And insisted on seeing the CFO visually, right? In order to verify that he was communicating with the person he thought he was communicating with. Well, this scam was very sophisticated, and it involved multiple scammers. And we talked about that last week, how more and more it's becoming very obvious that a lot of scams are backed by organized crime versus these lone wolf scammers, right? So they had a scammer impersonate not only the CFO, but other representatives of the company. And they were using deepfake video to impersonate them on a Teams call. So this worker wound up transferring out $25 million to the scammers in this scam. So when we think about how did that even happen, when this person, this worker went and did the thing that he was supposed to do, and he went and did a second step to verify that he was speaking with who he was speaking with, why did it work, right? And that's what we have to look at now, because the scammers have these types of tools, and as they become easier to use and more accessible, we're going to see this happen. It always starts at enterprise because that's where all the money is, and then it comes down to individuals, right? So we're going to start seeing it come down to individuals. We see it currently already with romance scams. We see people who are in long distance relationships, and the person can't meet them, but they can do a video call with them. And they do it by using deepfake software, where you'll have a man posing as a woman talking to another man as part of a relationship. And people get scammed out of their life savings due to this. So moving on. AI chatbots for phishing. So we talked a little bit about phishing emails and phishing tactics. I remember getting phishing emails, like I got one from Netflix years and years ago, and it was, saying, hey, your card declined, and if you don't put your new card information in, you're going to lose your subscription. It's going to be bad, right? So I knew off the bat that it was a scam. But there was always these markers that indicated that it could be a scam, right? The grammar was off. The punctuation was missing in certain areas. It's just, it appeared kind of amateur, right? Not like a big company like Netflix with an amazing marketing team probably made it. It just didn't look like it. Well, that's starting to go away, because now with these AI bots that you probably think of or heard of services like ChatGPT, Copilot, Microsoft Copilot. Now it's easy to go draft me an email that looks professional, that says this, right? One thing about ChatGPT, Copilot, and other similar types of AI software that do these services is that there's ethical guardrails, meaning that if I ask ChatGPT, help me commit tax fraud, ChatGPT would tell me, I can't help you commit tax fraud that goes against my ethical standards, right? It's not also not going to give you medical advice, also not going to give you legal advice and things like that. The problem is that a version of ChatGPT, well, different versions, there's more than one, are being created, and that software is being sold on the dark web for scammers to use. What you're looking at here, if memory serves correct, I think this is Fraud GPT. They have all kinds of different names. There's a Fraud GPT, Evil GPT, GPT, Wolf GPT. And essentially, it's just like a Chat GPT, but it has no guardrails. So what you're looking at here is requests to write malicious code, requests to, hey, write me a text, an SMS text thread, telling someone to give me their bank account information, right? So now these scammers who perhaps, or are typically even more global outside the United States, where there is the language barrier sometimes when it comes to grammar and structure, sentence structure and everything like that, just like it would be for us over there. Now that's not a barrier anymore. So people used to lean heavily on looking for mistakes like grammar and these types of phishing communications to go, this is legitimate or this is not legitimate. We cannot do that anymore. And if we have time at the end today, I'll show you my ChatGPT program. And so you can actually see how it looks in real life, although I won't tell it to write a scam email or anything like that. And then we have image generation and manipulation. So I talked a little bit earlier briefly about Google just coming out with their video program, right? Now they can make an entire movie out of AI. And it looks pretty decent. It doesn't look that bad. And it's pretty phenomenal that you can literally make a motion picture without having any actors by just telling this computer program what you want to happen in the story, and this computer program literally producing the video based on your instructions. The same's being done with images. And so again, going back to how do we evaluate the legitimacy of a communication that comes our way? We can't get in this habit or stay in this habit if this is what we're currently doing of going, well, this looks legitimate, so therefore it must be legitimate. Because again, this is risky behavior, especially considering how AI is helping scammers and identity thieves create documents that look completely legitimate, like utility bills, like vendor emails, and things like that. Now, I put this picture here just because I thought it was pretty funny, where it wants you to spot, you know, if you can tell if it's an AI image. I don't know if anyone's taken a look at this waitress's hands and noticed anything that looks a little off. But AI is still not perfect, but it's going to be perfect. So just so you know, it is not perfect yet. It is going to be perfect. So, and again, we're going to have takeaways at the end, but this is just keeping you informed about what the capabilities of scammers are now. And then something else as a takeaway to this is, you know, think about how long it would take to type out an email, to take a logo, save the logo file, paste it onto a doc, convert the doc into a certain type of file, right? In order to execute this type of scam. It takes time. And if you're doing at a high volume, that takes a lot of time. You can't approach as many potential victims, right? Well, AI fixes that because it does these types of functions instantaneously at a higher volume, right? So not only is it looking more sophisticated, but it's literally increasing the capacity of scammers, which is why we're seeing an increase in fraud loss. From year prior to last year, 25% increase in fraud loss. And that's because these scams are becoming more effective. And it's through tools, the use of AI. Moving on to data mining and personalization. So data mining is essentially using algorithms to do analysis, scan, collect data information from public sources. It could be from breaches. You know, you can upload an Excel file into an AI program and say, you know, and that has people's names, social security numbers, date of birth, addresses and stuff, and go analyze this and give me a list of 100 people that would most likely open my email, right? And the software will answer you. It will shoot out a list from the list you provided and say, based on the data, these are the top 100 people that would be most likely to answer your email. So using this strategy, again, it's all leading to how scams are going to become more effective. They're going to be harder to decipher. You're going to go, well, this seems really personal. This vendor obviously knows my information. They know that I'm an AT&T customer, right? So they know my phone number. So it's all in the goal of legitimizing the false identity. And this is all of these tools are ways in which these scammers do that. Moving on to synthetic identity. We talked about synthetic identity last session. Synthetic identity is when identity thieves take different components of an identity, such as a name, a date of birth, a social, and they combine these components to make a false or a synthetic identity. We often see synthetic identity theft co-aligned with child identity theft, because if you recall, we talked about the process of how you build a credit profile, right? When you're born, you get a social security number. You don't necessarily automatically have that social security number sent to all the major credit bureaus, right? They don't have your social security number yet. What happens is the first time you take out a line of credit or apply to rent an apartment or to buy a phone, that's when that social gets pinged to one of the bureaus that's used as a vendor, and it creates a credit profile. But the credit bureaus don't have a feed automatically going with Social Security's administration to verify that the name matches up with the social, matches up with the date of birth, matches up with the address. All they know is they got a request from this person with this social, and that's what they're going to capture, right? So with AI coming into the mix, you know, think about a school system where the student population's social security numbers got compromised. Think about now I have all these social security numbers. I need to produce a bunch of false documents because I'm a broker I broker data on the dark web. Now, instead of taking a bunch of time to input and create these synthetic identities, now I can import lists of data and say, produce new identities. And it can be done like that versus having to be so manual. So, and again, obviously synthetic identity theft is a huge pain because you have to literally deny the existence of this fake person. But the biggest pain in the butt about identity theft really is the new account fraud, right? Because these are accounts that you didn't set up, but that are potentially going into default under your social and so forth. People find out about it later. It's just a pain in the neck to repair. And then last, we're going to talk about bypassing security systems. Talked about last week the importance of not reusing the same password over all of your accounts, right? So if I'm using AI and I have lists because I'm part of a hacker group that's breached, 20 major Fortune 500 companies, and I take all those lists and I put them into an AI compatible software, and I say, find me any common username and passwords amongst one person, right? Is there one person that's a member or customer of all of these vendors or some of these vendors? And what's the username and password, and do they match? Right? Before, that would have been very manual. It's not manual anymore. And what's important to note is that credential stuffing, which we talked about before, is not a new method, right? This is something that they've already been using and doing. But now, getting better and more targeted with which credentials to use is going to become easier and quicker because of AI. But what you're looking at here are different types of hacking. There's more. I don't have all of them up here, but these are kind of the more common types of hacking that AI can help hackers become more efficient and effective when trying to breach a system or find a vulnerability, right? AI can even code if you wanted to. It can literally create a website, the code for a website. It's pretty phenomenal. But if you're, before we move on, if you're not using a password manager, I would highly recommend that you look into one. Password manager is, I'll just explain the concept of it. Basically, consider every type of company or provider that you're a customer of, right? You have probably a health insurance plan. You probably have streaming subscriptions. Maybe you've got a Pinterest account. You have other social media accounts, and you may have an email account that you haven't looked at in 20 years, but you still have it because you stopped using Yahoo 20 years ago and now you use Google, right? We have, I believe it's estimated like over 100 something accounts today. When you think about how many online account profiles you have out there, it's impossible to remember 100 different usernames and passwords. That's why credential stuffing works, because most people will reuse the same username and passwords over and across a bunch of their accounts. So a password manager eliminates that, because what it does is it actually can create a password and input the password and your username when you log into these profiles. And you only have to remember something called a master password, right? So you only have to remember the password to your password manager, and your password manager can actually go in and put your login credentials into your online accounts. There's password managers that you can purchase. There's also free password managers. If you use Chrome browser, Chrome has a password manager. It's just something for you to explore offline, but I would highly recommend looking into one if you haven't done so already. Another great feature about password managers is that a lot of them do dark web scan as well. So you can actually see when your login credentials for a particular website were compromised or showing up as for sale on the dark web. So that can prompt you to go and change your username and password for that account, which is really nice. All right, so some takeaways, right? So we went over 7 different types of AI tools and approaches that are being used in scams today, and what those look like. Now, so let's talk about the takeaways and the best practices. So for voice cloning, as a reminder, this is when a scammer can take an audio file of your voice or of someone's voice. They can put it into a cloner, and they can give instructions for the voice to say certain things, right? And so they can use it to imitate a grandchild, imitate a family member, imitate an employer, right? They can use it for multiple things. So a couple recommendations. One is you could create a code word for your family members, right? Or think about a security question, right? Something the scammer wouldn't know. It could even be a trick question like, well, what did I bring over for lunch last week? And the scammer might go, turkey, I don't remember, right? These are just little things you could do to, one, help slow yourself down so you're not pressured into moving too fast and giving out information or facilitating a transaction immediately. But two, if you had a code word instead, they don't know the code word, that's a tip that, you're not dealing with who you think you're dealing with. But the better best practice is to always reverse the method of communication. So if you're getting a phone call and it's your grandchild, it sounds just like your grandchild's panicking. They said that they're on the side of the road, they're freaking out, they need money, or they're in jail, or they've been kidnapped. Hang up. As hard is it gonna be? Hang up and then go into your contacts and call your grandchild back on their phone number. And that's how you know you're going to get in touch with the person you're speaking with. So always changing the direction of communication is really the best practice. But you can do code words and stuff too. Okay, video deepfakes. Again, this is similar to voice cloning, but we're talking about visual, right? Being able to manipulate the video of someone's features and combined with the voice cloning, have them say a certain thing, right? The biggest thing is that you can't lean on video to verify that you're speaking to who you think you're speaking to. Honestly, like that's really the biggest takeaway from this is that, okay, just because I can see this person, that doesn't mean that that's who they are, right? So to give you an example, let's say a scammer clones a profile of a family member, let's say a sister, right? Because they looked on your profile and they saw your family hierarchy on your Facebook account and they saw your sister's profile. Your sister's profile wasn't locked down. All they did was they copy and pasted and they did the same. They made up another profile that looked just like your sister. One letter may be different, but otherwise it looks just like your sister. And then you get a request from your sister saying, hey, I don't know what happened. I got bumped off your friend list, right? And you add it. Then you're getting a video call from Facebook, right? As your sister. How do you know that that is your sister? Disconnect the communication and reverse it, right? AI chatbots for phishing. So again, same basic steps. So I guess hopefully what I'm conveying here is the methods are kind of the same for preventing becoming a victim. It's really slow down and verify that you're communicating with the entity that you think you are, right? If you get a phishing email and it says, hey, we're just letting you know there was a $3,000 charge and that's been posted to your Bank of America XYZ account statement. If this is a mistake, log in here so you can correct it, right? You should definitely look into that, right? But you don't need to log into that link that email provided, right? You go to bankofamerica.com and log into your member portal where you know you're on the right site and you know you're going into your member portal. This prevents you from giving your login credentials to a scammer via phishing attack. That makes sense? Image manipulation, again, same with deepfake video. just don't use, just because you're getting something that looks legitimate doesn't mean it necessarily is. Like a great example are the toll scams going around right now, right? Anyone getting fake toll scams in the mail and you're going, I haven't been there. What are they talking about? Right? This is a great
I'm
example.
getting those all the time, getting those
Right.
all the time.
Yeah, but me too. Me too. And if you notice, they're more frequent and they look very real. I mean, when I got one, I was like, what is this? And then I was like, oh, this is a scam. But again, just image manipulations become so much easier and so much quicker. Just again, be mindful and don't use it to verify that, so what do you do then, right? Well, you could call the toll company directly. I wouldn't call the number that's on that paper. Right? I would go onto a search engine like a Google or Bing, whatever you use, and I would Google the actual toll company and I would call the direct number for that company. And I would say I've received a violation notice and haven't been in that state. Likely the toll company is going to say it's a scam, please disregard it. Right? With data mining, to be honest, there's not much you can do. At the end of the day, you can't help it if a company breaches your information. And a lot of times what that information is coming often from breaches. And then it's later sold. What you do have a right to is when a company does suffer a breach, they are required to notify the impacted population. Breaches are regulated on a state-by-state basis. As far as what the notification process looks like. But if you get a notification that your information could have been breached, I would definitely follow up with the company that sent the notification and find out exactly what information was compromised. Was it your address? Was it just your phone number? Was it a combination? And so forth. With synthetic identity, great best practice is, how you would prevent identity theft, which is through monitoring. We talked about credit freezes last session. We talked about fraud alerts. We talked about credit freezes being a great preventative tool to preventing new account fraud, right? So just keep up with that and review your credit reports pretty frequently. And then I kind of already touched on this when we were talking about bypassing security systems. Make sure that you have strong passwords. You're not using the same passwords across multiple accounts. If you have an online profile that has MFA, which stands for multi-factor authentication, or two-step verification, go ahead and turn that on. It might feel like kind of a pain, but the good thing is that if your login credentials did get stolen and someone was trying to break into your account, that second step verification or that MFA would likely prevent the scammer from getting in there. Now, on that note, scammers, again, they're very adaptive. They've learned to reach out to the person, spoofing a bank, right? Let's say a bank, right? They've got your login credentials. They tried to log in. You've set up two-factor authentication. Now they need that code, right? So they can reach out to the person they're trying to break into their account, pretending that they're the bank, and then they asking for the verification. We just sent you a text message. It has a code. Can you provide us that text message so we can make sure your account's locked down? No, don't ever give them that. They're never going to ask you for your verification code. That's not normal. That's a huge red flag that that's a scammer. So don't ever give out any part of the second step or third step verification process, whatever that may be. And then lastly, I just want to talk about, because I know we're coming up on the end, some resources for you. We talked about if you are scammed out of a significant amount of money, which people do get scammed out of anywhere between $2,000, $5,000, $50,000, $100,000. You can potentially recover some of that if you act quickly. The FBI has a recovery team that what they'll do is they liaise with financial institutions to try to stop the wire transfer from going international. But again, it's a certain window of time they have to actually intervene and potentially stop the transfer from going through. But if you want more information, you can certainly go visit ic3gov.com. There's a lot of great resources there as well as articles and so forth. The Federal Trade Commission is a huge resource. I am a huge fan of the Scam Alert newsletter. Those come out a couple times a week. They get emailed to you directly. They keep you up to date on all the different types of scams that are going around and circulating. And they're just really interesting generally. And then the Identity Theft Resource Center, I wanted to make you aware of because they actually provide identity theft resolution services for free for victims. So if your identity is compromised and you're like, I don't even know where to start, what should I do? And if you don't have a service or a friend or family member that can help you, this is a nonprofit organization that you can reach out to, and they'll actually have a resolution specialist assist you with the next steps for restoring your identity. And so that's really it. So I hope I've left enough time for questions if there are any. And I kept on time today, which is great. So we went a little over last
Thank
time.
you.
No, you did a great job, Sarah.
Yes.
Very, very interesting information. You talked about the dark web. Is there a way that we can go to I don't really want to go to the dark web, but to go there to see if we are in there?
So anyone can get there. The dark web is just a section of the internet, but you need a special browser to get in to access it, right? It's called the Tor browser. It's last I saw, the icon looked like an onion. You see that on your kid's device. I would have a conversation with them. Yeah, technically you could get in there. I wouldn't say that it's a low risk adventure.
Yes.
People that are there are, very tech savvy, and you do have a lot of criminals there. The websites that are on the marketplace are ran by criminals. So they're not going to follow a lot of the ethics and standards that the websites that are on the surface web have to follow, right? Such as tracking your location, tracking your activity, not accessing certain things on your device. So to answer your question, you could, but I wouldn't. I would instead invest in a service that does dark web monitoring. And that'll tell you too. And a lot of those services, in addition to doing active monitoring, they'll do something called a look back, where they'll actually look back. Usually it's about 10 years. So you can see any historical breaches that your information may have been part of before you got the service.
Would any of these resources that you have up right now have recommendations of legitimate dark web monitoring services?
Most legitimate identity theft protection plans have those services. It's a standard type of service. So like LifeLock, and Allstate, we have it, but we're an employee benefit, so we don't sell direct to consumer. A TransUnion, Sontiq, Identity Force. There's all kinds of vendors out there.
Okay.
But yeah, that's a pretty standard service in identity theft plans today.
Sounds good. Well, and there was a question on the chat about LifeLock, and it sounds like you would recommend something, if not LifeLock, something similar to them.
Yeah. What I'll more so just share my feedback on how to evaluate what's a good plan, what's not a good plan. So you want to make sure whatever vendor you use that you're getting the bang for your buck, So for example, some identity theft plans will say, We do dark web monitoring, and you can look at your credit scores and reports, but you can only look at them annually. Well, we talked about just now that you should look at your credit scores and reports more frequently. And if you wanted, you could do so for free through annualcreditreports.com. So if you are $30 for this plan and $30 for this plan, but this plan will do it monthly, and this plan will only do it annually, well, go with the plan that does it monthly,
Got it.
right? Now I take that same approach with other services and features.
I'm going to ask everybody if they want to have this information that's on the screen, which looks like very good stuff, to go ahead and take a picture of that with your phone, or jot it down real quickly. And Sahara, if you'll stop sharing, I'll share my screen again, and we will wrap up for everybody.
I think I've stopped sharing, but let me know if it's, are you still seeing my screen?
Yeah, we
Yes,
still-
yes, I am.
Oh, okay. Well, let me do this, and then let me. It is not letting me unshare.
Okay, well, not a problem, because
that-
all I want,
Did
all I
that
wanted
fix
to
it?
do. No, it backed up a few screens, but it's still there.
Can I ask a
Oh.
question?
Please.
Yeah, this is Mike Burks. I get quite a few recently, the pre-texting things where it is some scenario that looks legitimate. And
Mhm.
so my question is, if I just open the text just to read what it says and then delete it, am I at risk for being hacked or scammed just by opening to read it, the text itself, and then if I delete it?
Mm, yeah, but not from that, not from the text, not because you opened it.
Okay.
Usually it's because you clicked on something.
Mhm.
If you're just opening it and then deleting it, you're very low risk.
Okay, I've got to where I just delete and then say delete and report junk without even opening it all the way. Even sometimes it looks legitimate and it might sometimes be legitimate. I'm just afraid of taking the chance and even opening it in case it makes me more vulnerable to be.
Yeah, and that's a good practice. And like I have a Samsung, and it's really good at when I get a text that just says hi, right? It'll say, report spam, it'll automatically drop down. So the devices are getting better at
Mhm.
gauging and recommending,
Okay.
or if it's a scam or not. But yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We have a chat question. What kind of firewalls do you recommend?
So I don't have a great answer for that because that is more cyber realm. But what I can tell you is that if you have any firewall, it's better than nothing. And more important than just having a firewall is that you are regularly updating it. We talked about last session, how your device will constantly tell you that it's time to update your device, it's time to update it. And oftentimes we snooze it, right? Because, we're busy or we're it's going to shut down our device for too long or what have you, it's disruptive. But you want to make sure that whatever firewall you have, whatever software you have that's providing some form of protection, whether it's ransomware or keylog prevention or whatnot, that you're doing those regular updates, because every time there's an update, usually there's patches to vulnerabilities in the system.
I
Yeah, so
worry
Mike is-
sometimes when I get a message to update, is that a possible scam? And if I put the update in, I'm just giving everything to the scammer.
Well, if it's an update from your actual software, then, it could be, but not likely. If was it McAfee, is the more common
Well,
one.
it's more on my phone than my computer, but both of them, I get them on both.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, if you're not sure, don't click on it, but you can always, I would talk to somebody that's got more of a cybersecurity. I wish my stepson was on here because that's actually what he does. He does cybersecurity. But you may have to go to your operating system and go to the source of where the software is that you downloaded, and then do a manual update that way instead of leaning on the notification. That way, you know, it's from your actual system that you already installed it in there.
Okay,
Again, it's kind of just going right to the source.
right. Thank you.
Sahara, thank you again so very much, not only for tonight, but last week. Amazing, amazing information that all of us need. Really, really good. We'd like to invite you back for another session, maybe in the next year or the following year, just to update us on the new stuff that's out there that we need to be leery of. I'm going to conclude our meeting tonight, but I want to remind everybody that our next webinar is on August 26th. It's entitled Finding Healing, and it's processing grief through loss and life's transitions. And what I'm excited about on this one is it's not just about somebody maybe who's passed or something like that. We have a lot of transitions in life where, you know, we move on to the next phase. It might be retirement, or it might be that, you know, a family member, a niece, a nephew, a loved one has chose an alternate lifestyle than maybe what we would wish for them to have or to be. And so how do we process, you know, situations when they don't go like we would have anticipated? So that's going to be Tuesday night, August 26th. We're going to take the next couple of months off. But August 26th, we'll be back. And then we have another webinar on October 28th that you'll be hearing more about as well. So contact your local conference for more information about any estate planning questions. If you're curious about the difference between a will and a trust and which one would fit your situation better. If you have parents or older folks in your life, and they're maybe needing help with Medicaid or preserving assets or probate avoidance, your local conference representatives has information on all of those subjects in addition to, you know, the basic documents and things like that. So we hope you'll reach out to us, recommend us to your friends and family, and we would love to help you. Silka, if you are there and can unmute, I would ask that you would close us out with a word of prayer. And I'm catching Silka on the spot.
It's okay. We can ask someone else to pray.
Yep. Okay, Silka may be having technical difficulties. Adele, close us with prayer, if you would, please.
Sure. Heavenly Father, in this moment, we want to say thank you for this opportunity of learning how to protect ourselves. Thank you for Sahara for giving her time and her wisdom. And Lord, bless this group and help us every time to grow, to serve others, and to be a blessing in this broken world. We ask all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, folks, so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you August 26th for our next webinar. God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.